No other measure captures the legacy, the sort of cumulative disadvantage of race, or cumulative advantage of race for whites than net worth or wealth.
Even with the same income, white families have on average twice the wealth of black families. Much of that difference lies in the value of their homes. But what happens when we compare families along the color line who have similar wealth?
When you make the right comparison, when you compare a black kid from a family with the same income and wealth level as the white kid from the similar economic situation, rates of college graduation are the same. Rates of employment and work hours are the same. Rates of welfare usage are the same. So when we're talking about race in terms of a cultural accounting of these differences or a genetic accounting of these differences, we're really missing the picture because we're making the wrong comparison.
We have now understood genetic variation in human beings. I'm not saying our knowledge is fixed for all time, it never is, but I think we have seen just how shallow and superficial the average differences are among human races, even though in certain features like skin color and hair form, the visual differences are fairly striking. They're based on almost nothing in terms of overall genetic variation.
Racist biology simply doesn't work. But what is important is that race is a very salient social and historical concept, a social and historical idea. We live in racial smog.
Just because race isn't something biological, that doesn't mean it's not real. There are a lot of things in our society that are real and are not biological. Race, as we understand it as a social construct, has a lot to do with where somebody will live, what schools they will go to, what jobs they will get, whether or not they will have health insurance.
Black, white, and brown are merely skin colors. But we attach to them meanings and assumptions, even laws, that create enduring social inequality.
When I'm walking the streets alone at night, coming home from parties and stuff, I never get a sideways glance at people asking what I'm doing there. If a woman is stumbling with her shopping bags and I stop and say, "Would you like a hand?" I never get sort of a glance with two meanings. It's always, "Oh, nice white boy, you can help."
On my own campus, when I walk to classes, students often come up to me and ask me if I'm the football coach or the basketball coach. And I tell them, no, I'm a professor in the Department of Life Sciences.
It's easy to be white. It's very easy to be white. It's never been easy for Africans or African Americans here. Never. It's been a long, long time, since the abolition of slavery, African American slavery in this country. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Those ideas are still around.
No matter how they view themselves, the world sees Jackie, Gorgeous, and John as separate races. The social expectations that await them are in many ways dependent upon that racial assignment.
And the beauty of that ideology is that it justifies what is the greatest social agony of American life. Namely, it justifies the inequalities that exist in a society which is said to be based on equality.
Race is a human invention. We created it. We have used it in ways that have been, in many, many respects, quite negative and quite harmful. And we can think ourselves out of it. We made it, we can unmake it.
We want to be a colorblind society that values the content of character over the color of skin. The hope of thousands of newcomers who arrive each year is that we already are.
To the flag, United States of America, and to the republic of which
I don't see color. I see people, the saying goes.
There are people from 100 other nations who look different from you. People whose religion, history, skin color, and reason for being here today may be different from yours.
But in post-civil rights America, is color blindness the same as equality?
The notion of color blindness came to us from that famous I Have a Dream speech of Dr. Martin Luther King, where he said that people should be judged by the content of their character and not by the color of the skin. And what has happened in the post-civil rights era is that whites have assumed that we are already there, that we're in a society where color does not matter.
On the one hand, the civil rights era officially ended inequality of opportunity, officially ended de jure legal inequality. At the same time, those civil rights triumphs did nothing to address the underlying economic and social inequalities that had already been in place. It doesn't recognize the fact that the rewards, the house, the Lexus, the big bank account, those are not only the rewards of the pot of gold at the end of the game, they're also the starting position for the next generation.
The wealth gap grows. The advantages of being white accumulate from one generation to the next.
What are the benefits or the advantages to being white in a society that has historically given benefits and advantages to members of the dominant group? And if you are a person who has that privilege, you don't necessarily notice it.
So until we recognize that there's really no way to talk about equality of opportunity without talking about equality of condition, then we're stuck with this paradoxical idea of a colorblind society in a society that's totally unequal by color.
Claiming we don't see race won't end racial inequality. As Supreme Court Justice Harry Blackmun said, to get beyond racism, we must first take account of race. There is no other way.
And just as we're born into this system, we don't ask to be loaded up with stereotypes or omissions or distortions when we come into the world. We don't ask to be in a structure which is unfair, but that's what we have inherited. Whether you identify as a person of color, whether you identify as a white person, it doesn't matter.
I think we have to be uncomfortable with the present racial arrangement. In a sense, I think we have to be willing to be uncomfortable, willing to demand more of ourselves and more of our country, and willing to make the invisible visible.
I think we all have to think about, what can I influence? I don't influence everything, but the things I do influence, I can think about, how am I making this a more equitable environment? I can ask myself, who's included in this picture and who isn't? Who's had opportunities in my environment and who hasn't? What can I do about that?
The racialized society we live in has been under construction for 3 centuries. How can we unmake race unless we first confront its enormity as a historical and social reality and its emptiness as biology?
As a white male, almost 63 years old, I can look back, because I've gone through this journey over the last 20 years to examine this, and I can see that while I was privileged, my privilege just meant I had normal access. I wasn't privileged in that I had privilege above just having access to education, a job, decent pay, and things like that. So it's not that we're privileged and we have the superiority. It's the people in power have that, absolutely. But something else I've noticed, as I was taught that these other races were inferior, I lost empathy for them. I began to fear some groups or some members of a group. I was cut off from humanity, not because it was necessarily my choice, but because the social environment that gave me messages 24 hours a day, not just through TV and political debates and the way people talk, but in how our world is laid out. These kind of things influenced my ideas about myself and about others, and undoing those ideas and reconnecting with human beings is really an awakening, a reawakening of what it means to be human on this planet. This system denies our humanity for profit, turns humans into commodities to be exploited for profit. And while this was fine 100 years ago, we can no longer put up with this. We have the technology and the knowledge today to transform the way we do everything on planet Earth. No one needs to go without. We are at the doorway of abundance of food, energy, and the ability to provide services for each other so that we can thrive as Homo sapiens, as one human race.